Now that we've written the code to open a web page, we're going to use intents to open a map. Although the code for opening a location on a map isn't exactly the same, the concepts are similar. Now let's go back to the common intents page on the Android developer documentation. You can quickly get to it by Googling common intents. I want to open a map, so I'll click on the maps link in this document section. Before I write the code to open a map, let's talk a little bit more about the data URI. A URI, or Uniform Resource Identifier, is a string of characters that identifies a resource. One of the ways you use URIs every day is when you navigate to web addresses, like udacity.com. The formal name of a web address is a URL, or Uniform Resource Locator. A URL is a URI that identifies a web or network resource. But as we saw in the Android documentation for opening a map, a URI like geo can describe a physical location. Here's the full form of a URI, with all the optional parts shown in brackets. It begins with a scheme. The scheme describes what type of resource we're pointing to. Popular schemes on the web are HTTP and HTTPS, mail to, FTP, file, and geo. But there are many more. Depending on the particular scheme, it might be followed by 2 slashes and an authority part. The authority indicates an optional username and password to log in, a host name which could be a domain name or an IP address, and an optional port. For HTTP requests, unless otherwise stated, browsers assume port 80. So if we try that in our browser, we'll see that Baidu.com, the Chinese web search engine, navigates to the same place if we leave off the ports or add it onto the end. After the authority part, there's a path to a resource. If the authority exists, there must be a slash between the authority and the path. In this case, between the authority, which contains www.udacity.com as the host, in this case we have an authority that contains www.udacity.com and the path courses/all. Mail to is one of the schemes that doesn't require the authority part and can work with just a path. In this case, the person you want to email. The query is next, and it has no required format other than it begins with a question mark. It's common to use key value pairs to specify data, but that isn't required. Despite its name, the query isn't always about searching. Officially, it has no size limit, but in practice, it can range from about 8,000 characters to over 190,000 characters, depending on the browser being used. If you've seen links that say email this article, it might be including the full text of the article in the link using the query. The last element of the URI is the fragment. This is preceded by a hash and indicates secondary data that the path resource will use. What the fragment does depends on the path, the browser, and possibly the application that's being run. For example, in the Android Developer Nanodegree trailer, this links to 10 seconds from the beginning of the video. Next, you're going to look at some URIs and identify parts of them.